Hello Patreons, legends. I want to say thank you for any new patrons or existing ones for signing up, as it's just amazing for me that people value my content enough to support me in what I'm doing, making these videos, and I love it. So today I want to talk to you about frame materials and what I would recommend and what I wouldn't recommend. But before we start that, I want to start by saying one thing that will really help you when picking a bike or material or anything like that is look at the geometry of the bikes you're looking at first, yeah? And if you're not sure on what to go for, contact a bike fitter or have a bike fit and ask what you should be going for. It's really easy to look at the cool bikes and just think, oh, that would look awesome, or, oh, I saw someone else was using one of these. But what you really want to do is get that geometry right for your body first. I have very long legs, quite short arms. I find it difficult to get bikes to suit me. And that's kind of why I went across to Ritchie as well, because the geometry suited me much better than my original Linsky from years and years ago. So the first thing I can recommend is look at the geometry first, and then look at the material after and make sure that suits as well. Finding the right bike's quite difficult to do, but I can help you on that, so that's not an issue. So I want to talk about the 4 frame materials, the 4 main ones today. So that's going to be steel, aluminium, titanium, and carbon fiber. There is some honourable mentions like wood. Yeah, wood is one. I've seen a wooden bike before. I've ridden a wooden bike before. And there's also like bamboo and stuff like that. But I'm not going to talk about them because I know absolutely nothing about them. And I feel as though after working in a bike shop for so long and doing what I do for so long, these are probably things that would be more readily available if they were really that good. Am I allowed to say that? Not sure, but that's my opinion. So anyway, it is what it is. Let's talk about steel. And this is my steel bike. So this is a steel bike. This is my Ritchie Outback, and this is what I'm currently using in my 2020 season. As you can see, it's beautifully made, and you've got all these little things like you don't actually have a collar. It's actually inbuilt to the frame, the seat post clamp there, carbon forks on all these kind of things. But you can see even, again, beautiful welding, you know, really is a nice bike, and that's steel. So steel has some amazing advantages. It also has some drawbacks as well though. So let's talk about the advantages. The first thing is, it's pretty cheap to buy. Steel bikes aren't the most expensive, and they've been around a very long time. So if you go to someone that's been making steel bikes for a long time, you're really going to get something quite special. They're also very bomb-proof. You're going to have to really do something crazy to break a steel bike. I don't think I've ever seen a broken steel bike, if I'm brutally honest. And if you're bikepacking in the middle of absolutely nowhere and you do happen to break a steel bike, you could probably find someone in the middle of a rural country that would actually weld that back together for you. So yeah, it's pretty easy to repair, it's cheap to buy. But the main thing about steel is it's so comfortable. We're not talking it just takes the edge off the road. We are talking this is something that's gonna keep you on that bike for a very, very long time. So I've recently come across from titanium to steel, and although it takes a little bit longer to get up to speed, my God, is it so much more comfortable. It's really helped take the edge out the road. It takes, even on gravel, it just really takes so much more of the brunt than you'd expect. There is one thing that is a drawback with steel, and that is the weight. Steel bikes are heavy. Like my frame set, forks and frame is like 2 kilo, 2.2 kilo, which compared to something like carbon fiber is maybe 3 times the weight. But for me, it's worth it, because I'm not feeling uncomfortable. I can ride in that a really long time. It offers me security. I love the thin tubing and the way it looks. It really works for me personally, and I'm happy to take an extra kilo, kilo and a half to have that security of steel, but mainly to have that beautiful comfort of how it rides. It really is something special. So steel, cheap to buy, bomb-proof, super simple to repair if you were in the middle of nowhere and needed that doing. But cons, it's quite a heavy material to use. This is my alloy bike. You can see it kind of lives on my turbo. I don't use it much. It's very messy. You can see here, it is very light, very stiff. And it's actually, you'll find with aluminium, it's quite oversized, but beautiful bike. It's a B-twin Allure. I've had it customly sprayed. Really like simplicity of the whiteness, but yeah, this is alloy. So aluminium. Aluminium is a fantastic material. So unlike steel, it's quite a bit lighter, which is a huge advantage. And also, it's very cheap to buy. And it's pretty bomb-proof as well. It's not as bomb-proof as steel, but you will find it can take a real hammering. I find with aluminium, you will see them in the majority of the market at the lower end. So we're talking anything up to £1.50, £2,000. You will find aluminium bikes roughly around that area because they're very cheap to produce, and companies like Giant, Specialized will produce these in the absolute masses, which is fine. It's good. You'll see more of them around. You know, probably a bike I grew up, kept seeing around a lot was a Giant Defy. That's an amazing, good geometry alloy bike, and I rode a few and actually thought quite highly of them, to be honest. The cons of aluminium are they are very stiff. You know, you probably see more breakages in aluminium, but that's probably because they're a little bit more common, so take that with a pinch of salt. But they are very stiff. They do pick up a lot of the vibrations from the road. The tubing is normally very oversized. You know, if you're going to buy an aluminium bike, I would recommend getting one from, you know, a good reputable bike brand. So we're talking Specialized, Giant, Trek, you know, Kinesis. People like this make a really good alloy bike, because you'll get a cheap alloy bike off eBay or something like that. If you don't really know the brand, you will find it will be incredibly heavy. So aluminium is a great material. The pros of it is, yes, it's lighter than steel. Yeah, it's pretty bomb proof. But the cons, you are looking, they are very stiff, and you know, you have to get a good aluminium bike to actually get the benefit of riding an aluminium bike, if that makes sense. So as you can see, it's a beautiful looking frame. It's got these amazing welds here, so you can see how much craftsmanship's gone into this. You can see the price. This one was actually chromed, and it's had laser etched Linsky GR270 put into it. Being chromed, you do get a lot of scratching, but as you can see, it's a very nice looking bike, and it is very, very light. So titanium. Titanium is probably the material I've had the most experience with. So I started riding about 7 years ago. And then a few years in, I started working at a bike shop. And I did this because, well, I needed money and I wanted to learn a lot more about bikes. And this was actually a titanium specialist shop. It was called Fatbirds. It was in Norfolk. And unfortunately, years on now, it's actually closed down after I left. Maybe they missed me so much, I don't know. So titanium bikes is my specialty, and this is something I know a lot about. So the first thing I want to talk about with titanium is the pros. It's very light. You know, it's not as light as carbon, but it's not much heavier. It is bomb-proof. You know, it is literally a task to try and break a titanium bike, providing you get a good one, because they come in different grades. Some are very cheaply made, sent across from China. Some are custom made and in an in-house factory. So you're talking brands that are custom made in an in-house factory. We're talking Linsky, Moots, people like that. The ones that come across from China, although still very good quality, but a bit more mass produced, you're looking at, you know, Van Nicholas's and stuff like that. But overall, they're very bomb-proof bikes and they don't rust. When you buy a titanium bike, you are buying a titanium bike for life. So not only are they quite lightweight, I talk about comfort. They're very flexible as well. You know, you can see in the stays when you actually take the wheel out, put one together, you can see the flexibility there. That works really well because it takes a lot of the roughness out the road. So if you're on some pretty bad tarmac, you can literally just steam it. It'll get up to speed and it'll hold that speed well. And one thing a lot of people that ride titanium will say, they're a little bit harder to get up to speed, but it's a lot easier to hold the speed because it just takes the edge off the terrain. And that's a really nice thing with titanium. Paired with a really nice set of carbon forks, you've got a lovely frame and fork setup there. I wouldn't recommend titanium forks. We'll talk about that another day because they're just expensive, and yeah, they're not that great if you want me to be brutally honest with you. The cons of titanium though are, although they are this super material, they aren't cheap. They are expensive, guys. So the cheaper ones where you're looking at like £800 frames, so maybe let's say $1,000 frames, they're going to be mass produced. You know, you could actually be in the market of an aluminium bike, could be, you know, quite, you know, a better investment. But if you're looking at spending, let's say, $2,000, then a titanium frame is just incredible. And you're going to get a really, really good one for that kind of money. So titanium is expensive not only because of the material, but how the material is produced. So it has to be welded in a container with very, very little oxygen. So it has to be welded in a very special way to make it that light, to make it stick together. You get single butted, double butted. I wouldn't go for anything less than double butted when you come to titanium frames. You need it to be good. Double butted means it's been welded to a bit more of a higher standard, if this makes sense. It's the way they join the welds together, and it means that it's only going into the weld chamber once to be worked on a lot better than a single butted. It's a bit of a weird... Companies do this in a very different way, but one thing I can tell you is that there's a lot less breakages on double butted than single butted titanium bikes. So on top of that, another con is that because of the way it is produced, if you do get a crack in it, you're sending it back to the company. Most companies have a lifetime warranty, and they'll send you another one or repair yours in a special chamber. So that can be quite time consuming, when if you had a steel bike, that would be a completely different story. So titanium, it is very lightweight. It is extremely comfortable, but the cons are it is very pricey, unfortunately. And on top of that, if it did require repair, you're going to be waiting quite a long time for that to get done. And I'd love to show you a carbon fibre bike, but I don't have one at the minute. I've ridden so many in my time, from working at a bike shop to owning a few. I even got to ride Peter Sagan's bike once, which is very cool, but I'm not going to talk about that today. But carbon fibre is something that I have ridden many a times and bikepacked on, actually. Carbon fibre, the last one I want to talk about today. Carbon fibre is an amazing material, and not only is it amazing because of how light and efficient it is made in such a special way, and the production of carbon fibre, although mass produced, is very special. If you wanted to find out a little bit more about that, it's definitely worth putting into YouTube, how is a carbon fibre bike made? You're going to see some really cool, amazing things. So I really like carbon. I've ridden quite a few carbon bikes in my time. So my probably favourite one I've ever ridden was a Fuji D6, and that was actually a time trial bike, and I loved that. And like I said, I got the opportunity to ride one of Peter Sagan's S-Works once, which was just immense. It's an amazing bike. So carbon fibre is super lightweight, but we're not talking like, that's a little bit lighter than steel. It is a lot lighter than steel. We are talking like a kilo and a half lighter. It's incredible. You can get frames like 700-800 grams, you know, it's really an insane material. So up a climb, that's going to help you a lot. You know, a kilo and a half, that's a bottle of water or two. You know, that's a lot of weight saving. I think the best thing about it, not only is it so light, it's agile, it feels really snappy. So you can really get up a climb, get out the saddle, swing it side to side. It's really nice to ride. And you notice that when you're going up an alpine pass, that having a lighter carbon bike goes a really, really long way. In my opinion, I need to talk about the cons more than anything with carbon fibre, because you'll see a lot of them in ultra racing, bikepacking, but not as many as you would think. You know, they are an amazing material. They are really well made, but for long distance, they are normally very aggressive. So you'll find, because it's carbon, it's more of a racy material. It's what you're going to see in the Tour de France. So you're actually going to see a lot of people on these bikes in really aero-aggressive positions. So you're going to struggle to find a bit more of an endurance-y carbon bike in my opinion. I haven't seen many that I think the geometry matches what I would like. The next thing being they're very stiff. Yes, they're agile, but they're stiff. That's what makes them snappy, you know. So you'll find that they're really aggressive, you know, and really interesting to ride. You can really throw them about. And although that's probably a good thing, when you're bike packing, stiffness doesn't necessarily make you comfortable, unfortunately. It does make it a lot harder. And although you can make a carbon bike very comfortable with tyre choices and things like that, they really pick up all the feel of the road. So if you're on a crappy Eastern European, you know, dirt road, you really will know about it with carbon fibre. The next thing I want to talk about carbon fibre is incredibly strong. Yeah, incredibly strong where it needs to be. So let's say you put it onto a flight, a plane, and it's not handled correctly and it's bent slightly in the wrong way than what it would usually be stressed as if it was being ridden on a road, it will snap pretty easily, yeah? Carbon fibre is only strong where it needs to be strong. Places like on the joints and stuff. You know, literally go up to a carbon fibre bike, tap it, and you will hear it ding, 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 ding. It'll feel so hollow and you can actually thinly bend it like this inside. But then you go to a joint and it's rock solid. That's the thing with carbon fibre. The reason it's light is it's only strong where it needs to be strong. So it can get broken pretty easily. And repairing a carbon fibre bike, yeah, some people repair them. You know, there is companies that do this. I probably wouldn't ever ride a repaired carbon bike, even if it was repaired better. I had one repaired once and it was absolutely fine and I loved it. But you always think, oh, actually, it's a different resin. It's a different kind of carbon fibre material you're using after it gets repaired. You know, they break pretty easily. And when they're broken, the repairs can cost more than a new frame as well. So in my opinion, I probably wouldn't get one repaired personally. I'll probably just end up getting a new frame and trying something a bit different. But carbon fibre is not really something I keep in my arsenal of bikes, unfortunately. I think if I was racing, then I probably would. But bike packing, ultra distance racing, you wouldn't see me on a carbon fibre bike. So the pros of carbon fibre, they are beautifully light. They are very stiff, they're very fast, but the cons, they are prone to breaking a little bit more and they are extremely expensive. So when we do talk about the price of carbon fibre bikes, one thing I do want to say is don't buy cheap, just don't. Like AliExpress, like you can buy direct from China and all this. Don't put your life at risk with cheap carbon wheels or frames, anything like that, guys. It's just not worth the risk, you know. I've seen friends have wheels snap because they bought ones that were 200 quid instead of ones that were £2,000 because they were replicas. Oh, they came out the same factory. A lot of people will say that. Try not to take that advice too to heart. Even the same with bike frames. I've seen ones snap, you know, on group rides, literally, because they've just been cheap ones that just haven't had the attention to detail like Trek or Specialized would. And also you'll find with a lot of cheap carbon fibre frames, even from the big suppliers, they're not as light as they could be. You know, I think if you're going to buy a carbon fibre bike, spend the money. You know, go for a really good frame set, like $1,500, $2,000, you know, up in price. Go silly, because you're going to get something that's going to be really good, it's going to last, and it's going to be really well put together. So when I say well put together, good carbon fibre, quality sheets and resin, because that's the process of how carbon fibre is made and put together. So yeah, so they are going to be expensive. Try not to be pulled in so much by stuff like Ribble, $899 for a full bike and it's carbon fibre. That's going to be so light. Yeah, it might be light, but it might not give what you want, and it probably won't be as light as something about the same price in aluminium. You'd be surprised, guys. You know, you really would. So which one should you choose? Well, to be brutally honest, I think a lot of it, personally, for me, would come down to budget. So I think if I was back working at the bike shop, I wouldn't be able to afford a titanium bike. I probably wouldn't be able to afford one now, to be brutally honest with you. They are expensive, but if you're buying a bike for life, it's actually not that bad, because you're not going to be changing it every year like you would some bikes. You're going to have it for 5-10 years. So it's worth spending the extra money, really. But for me, if I was going back, I'd probably, to the start of my bikepacking career, I would either, if I could afford it, I'd go titanium. If not, I'll probably be on steel or aluminium. Although carbon fibre is an amazing material to bikepack with, it's not really anything I've had much luck on, if I'm brutally honest. I just found it a little bit too uncomfortable. But a lot of these races are won by people on carbon fibre bikes, so you have to take my opinion with a pinch of salt because it's just one person's opinion and it's something that's come from a collective amount of trips that I have done. So if I was to go out and buy a bike now, it would probably be very high-end steel or titanium, because I know a few days in I'd regret buying a cheaper alloy bike, which I felt uncomfortable on. But then again, if the right alloy bike came up and the geometry is perfect, I'd actually consider buying that and maybe just using a slightly wider tyre to give me a little bit more comfort. So there's a lot of choices you have, but it's really going to be a personal preference to you. You can spend a lot of money and be super quick on a carbon, but be quite uncomfortable. You can spend a lot of money and be super comfortable on titanium. Or you can spend not too much money and have a steel and have a heavier bike, but be super comfortable. Or you can spend not so much money, have an alloy bike and find yourself not so comfortable. So there's a lot of options there, but remember, comfort comes from bike fit more than anything. And also on top of that, you can make bikes more comfortable by, bringing the stem up. You can use different saddles. You can have bigger tires. There's a lot of options there. So make sure you sit down and really think about the bike you're going to buy. Have a look at them, find the geometry that works for you. Go through eBay, go through, all the Wiggle, Chain Reaction, all these bike shops. Go and test ride some. If you're spending thousands on a bike, make it something you want. I've got a friend down this way, lovely guy, but changes his bike every month for these ridiculously aggressive racy things. And I've said to him before, mate, just buy something a little bit better on the endurance wise. Go for a bike fit and then see what they recommend. You'll get the right thing for you. And he just ends up buying something even more aggressive. It's crazy. I just don't get the guy, to be brutally honest. He probably won't see this video, so I'm going to say that. I'm the kind of guy, so I was lucky enough when I first started properly getting into ultra racing. I worked in a bike shop and it was a titanium specialist, like I said. And they let me use a Linsky. I eventually broke my first record on that and Linsky gave me a bike. So that was really, really nice of them to do that. And I'm forever grateful for Linsky. We had many years and years together before eventually I actually went across to Ritchie because I wanted to ride steel and the geometry was a bit more suited to me. And the staff had changed a lot at Linsky. So it was a very different situation at the time for me, if I'm brutally honest. So I was really lucky to be on titanium when as a person, I couldn't really afford titanium, but it was really, really good. But now riding the Ritchie, I really appreciate the steel and I really enjoy that. So have a think about what you want, take this advice and think about how you're going to move forward, but take the time to think. Don't just buy anything on a whim or because your friend said. Get something that's right for you and your riding will be so much better for you. Thank you for taking the time to listen, guys, and thank you for being a Patreon.